Hello and welcome to As It Comes, live from a musician's point of view. I'm Davina, I'm a freelance cellist based in London, and I'm wistfully looking back at the year of 2019 as I complete my tax return. Yay! It's always a worthy retrospective doing the tax return as we tally up our income and expenses over the financial year. Sometimes it's nice to look back on your diary and think about the memories of those gigs. The good, the bad, what we learnt from them, who we met on certain engagements, how we managed logistically to teach in the morning in one city and do a show on the other end of the country somehow that night. My guest for episode 31, Daniel Rainey, spoke about this. How whenever he was feeling a bit uncertain for the future, he'd just look at past engagements and feel proud of himself for overcoming certain obstacles in the past, and having faith that work would come in when he thought at the time it wouldn't. Go back and listen to that episode, by the way, number 31. Obviously, we're looking back at the 2019 to 2020 financial year through a completely different lens this year. Instead of giving us solace that things will come through, looking at the past is just a stark reminder of how things have changed working as a freelance musician. It's been kind of crazy looking at old receipts of how much I used to spend on travel, how many lunches and dinners out I purchased, namely how much I spent on veggie Percy pigs on the road. For the uninitiated, Percy pigs are a sweet or a candy that you can buy here in the UK from Marks and Spencer's. They got me through many a train ride and rehearsal, even some shows back in the day. It's great when you have a dress that has pockets, just saying. And while I feel a bit sad looking back on the good old days, I do at least feel grateful that I got to do those professional engagements. I'm just going to claim as many expenses as I can. And on the plus side, if you can call it that, at least the tax return for 2020 to 21 is going to be relatively simple. My guest this episode is composer, arranger and orchestrator Peter Riley. Peter's very accomplished at what he does, having worked on orchestration and arrangements with Pete Tong, Jules Buckley and the Heritage Orchestra, Tom Jenkinson, aka Squarepusher, adding orchestral elements to electronic and dance music, as well as many other incredible jobs that he's done. We chatted about what keeps Peter busy now that he's got the time, reaching crazy deadlines, keeping up to date with skills required for an ever-evolving job, the importance of feedback. To be honest, we talked about loads of things, because we chatted in person, which, as we all know, is more conducive to a flowing conversation than online. We met up in Beckenham Place Park in southeast London in early December, back in the heady days of Tier 2 or 3, so you'll hear some natural background noise occasionally, some animals, but I think it adds to the ambience nicely. You can pretend you're on a walk with us. Here's my chat with Peter.
Beckenham Place Park, and that's the mansion up there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's the first time I've ever been here.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, this has been my kind of local park for, well, my whole life. It's been my sort of second nearest park, so it would be the place we kind of came after GCSEs and stuff like that.
Oh, and you mentioned before that you saw your first bit of live music this summer here, didn't you?
Yes, it was a really kind of important moment, actually. I had a group of friends that I normally work with in Heritage Orchestra, and they announced that they were playing a gig under a tree in my local park. Yeah. So these are guys that would normally be playing up at the West End and everything else. They were playing New Orleans jazz in my local park, basically for the people that turned up. And yeah, so the Alvar Tree Frogs, I'll shout out to them now. It was quite an emotional thing, actually, to see live music for the first time since, whatever it was, February.
Yeah, since March, isn't it? Yeah. How do you feel when you see live music again? Because for me, I'm always like, I start welling up inside. It's a strange, indescribable feeling for me.
I think it's always been a really important thing for me. Mm. But I think it's really kind of brought it home this year just how important it is. Yeah. It's that literal kind of connection with the people that are sat just meters from you, and the instruments are there, and it's all coming direct into your ears and not through some kind of, Zoom interface or even your TV.
4x4, 16 squares, yeah.
And it's the ability of, the audience to react to the performers and the performers to give that back to the audience, I think, which you lose.
Yeah.
it's feeding off that. I think it feels cold without that.
Yeah, and I think because you take it for granted, definitely when you're doing it all the time, I certainly feel that way, but the times that I have managed to make music this year, you realise how much you can communicate with your fellow music makers without actually saying anything. Because you're communicating with your instrument, with your voice or whatever. And that's a feeling that I feel like I'd really missed this year.
Yeah, I think it's a connection that you just can't get any other way, I think. And as you say, non-verbal communication, especially as someone that kind of hides behind the dots often in the music. I find that music is a great way to communicate without having to use words, and it's an incredible thing.
Oh, we need more of it, but we're not going to get much of it over the next few weeks, are we?
It's not great, I think, because I was hoping to have a little Christmas concert going on somewhere in Belgium, I think, which is now being another casualty, kind of things are all shutting down.
Yeah.
But it's really hard kind of thinking about the future, and you want to be hopeful, but at the same time you want to be realistic,
exactly.
Which is tricky. But I take some kind of solace in knowing that there are countries like Taiwan and New Zealand that have in the past few months been putting on arena size shows with 8,000, 10,000 people, admittedly turning up with their face masks and having their temperature checks. But I hope that is us. Some point next summer, fingers crossed, that'll be the best thing, will be having that experience again of being in a room absolutely kind of thronging with the energy of the audience.
I just hope that this country can look at those other countries as role models, I mean, it seems highly unlikely given who's...
She says as a New Zealander.
Well, given who's in power at the moment, and there's so much bravado and ego involved with all the decision-making processes. And I just wish that, we could look at these other countries and be like, look what's going on there.
Well, I think so. And because it's been a unique kind of thing for something to happen to effectively the whole world at once, to see how other countries have handled it. And admittedly, at the start, everyone was doing things slightly differently because they didn't really know what the effect would be. Yeah. But now we've seen that, if you go hard on it, if you close your borders down, if you do these things, suddenly your kind of cultural industries can return and your economy can start to get back to what it was. Yeah. And
the well-being of your citizens increases.
I mean, it seems like an obvious thing. Was it Stephen Fry said something when the Problems were coming back this summer for their sort of limited run, and he said something about music returning like the weeds coming up through the pavement.
Right.
Which is it's a nice image. I'd like to point out we're not weeds.
Sure.
But now we need watering. I think the pavement needs breaking up a bit.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because gardening is such a long-term thing, and gardening has been one of the things I've been doing this year during the pandemic, because we've all got these new ventures that we're getting into. But it's because it's such a long-lasting endeavour. It needs cultivation.
And I think that's a partnership between it's something we do as musicians, but it's something that society needs to kind of be involved in and say, is this something you want? Do you want this kind of rich kind of culture available to you, and this entertainment industry? It's not just about the arts, but it is about entertainment as well, and it's how we invest in that.
Yeah, it's such a long-term thing, isn't it? It's not just the end product, like, oh look, a concert, here's the thing, but there's such a build-up towards that as well. And
there's other industries involved, which I think sometimes people don't realise the kind of the offshoots of. You put on a concert, but there are, we've heard more about this summer, the people doing the kind of the rigging, the lighting, the sound. But then there's also the catering, there's all the local businesses that sit around a concert venue or a music festival that kind of really benefit. So to me, it seems like an obvious thing to really try and stimulate this next year, but we'll see, I think.
Yeah, keep the ecosystem going.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, thanks for joining me today in the park. I do enjoy an al fresco podcast session. So I'll just introduce you to people who don't know you. So Peter, you're a composer, arranger and orchestrator. What are some of the things that you've been doing this year? I mentioned gardening. What's one thing that you've been doing?
So you're talking about the distractions.
Sure.
Because I think, weirdly, they're always important in doing what I do, because a lot of it is spent in front of a computer. So I think I'm good at distractions anyway.
Oh, okay.
But this year they've definitely taken on a new kind of higher importance. So I'd say one of those is definitely gardening, same as you. I've got a big thing for chili peppers.
You do, don't you? And you've had a lot of success with chilies, is that right?
It's something, I don't know why. It's one of these things that you pick up a packet of seeds when you're 20 years old or something, and then you start every year, so it's growing different varieties, and it's just a bit of fun, and it's something that forces me outside of the house.
Yes, away from your computer screen.
Away from the computer screen. So it's literally just 20 minutes each day, and whether you're going just to water them or pot them up or something, or maybe you've grown them and you're making chili sauces to give to your friends and things like that. And I should have bought some today, sorry.
That's all right.
So I think that's an important distraction. Another one has weirdly been crazy golf online.
How do you play crazy golf online? How does that work?
Well, literally there's a game online called Golf with Your Friends.
Okay. I thought you were trying to get away from the computer screen.
I know. Well, this is the thing, but it's been the kind of the social outlet when you've not been in a park or in the outdoors. So, a group of us started playing that. It must have been in March, I guess. I don't even want to say how many hours we've spent playing crazy golf, but it's more about the talking and being around other people.
Yeah. It's the connection and the socialisation.
I say that because I rarely win.
Right.
But so that's been another major distraction. The final thing I'd say has been DIY.
Oh, of course, because you bought a property. Was it during the pandemic or shortly before?
It was shortly before, but I only moved in June, I think, because it was basically it all kind of was put on hold for quite a long while.
Yeah, of course.
And doing up a house, I can recommend as a great way to distract yourself from the rest of the world.
And I guess also, at least you have this time to do it, rather than like in our old schedules when we were super busy.
Yeah.
When do you find the time?
It's very true. I don't know what would be going on. If I'd had a normal busy year, actually, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
The wallpaper would probably still be hanging off the walls.
Yeah, well, it's nice to make it your haven. I remember talking to you about your property because I think you bought your place just as mine fell through.
Yeah, because we kind of went on that journey together in a way. Because I think you kind of were telling me about this probably this time last year.
That's right. I was very stressed. I remember,
And I can definitely... I can sympathise with the stress, especially as a musician. You kind of have all these extra hoops that you feel you have to jump through.
Exactly. I mean, I've heard a few stories from people trying to buy houses now, self-employed musicians, and it's been really difficult, to secure the mortgage. I feel like it was hard enough back in the day.
Yes, which is only 6 months ago, or whatever it was, 8 months ago.
But now, they want to see proof of your earnings, and I've heard stories of people being turned down for mortgages because they've been eligible for the self-employed income support scheme.
Yeah.
And you'd think, but that just shows that I earned, in the
that's
previous
income,
3 years. And then they retort and they say, but that shows that your income has been adversely affected by COVID. And it's like, whose hasn't,
Whose hasn't? And if you've got that kind of looking back at your last 3 years' income and you hope that will in some way return.
Yeah.
But it's such a difficult thing, and the rules just seem to be changing all the time. Because I had a friend who started the process a little bit after me, and she thought she had a mortgage in place, and then the same thing happened. They just changed the rules one day. So I was very, very lucky to kind of creep through at the point I did.
Yeah.
But,
good timing.
Good timing.
Very good timing. And that's the thing. It's just kind of this is a really nice dog. So cute. That's sort of the thing that sums up house buying, is that feeling of uncertainty and being out of control.
Because even the what are you meant to offer price-wise and what's going on with all this, and have they gone up and down? And
no one prepares you for those sorts of things.
No one prepares you.
They just say, make an offer, and you're like, of what, and then you just basically rely on all your friends and colleagues who've done it before to give you advice.
Well, you very briefly become an expert in these things. That's the weird thing. You do so much kind of internet research that you're like, you could go to kind of any postcode within 3 miles and you could name the average property price briefly.
Yeah.
But then 6 months later, that kind of information's all useless anyway. So it's kind of a strange thing.
It's when your Facebook sidebar ads start changing. You start getting all these ads for like mortgage advisors and like moving house and moving vans and things like that.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hits and you start getting ads for Homebase. So it's really nice to hear about the things that you've been up to. I have to say, you sent me some chili seeds earlier on in the year, but I had a 0% germination rate.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I'll tell you what, next year I'll give you seedlings.
Oh!
I'll get them going.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I had one chili plant that was successful, but that was, a little seedling plug plant from the aforementioned Homebase. And that did very well, but I just couldn't set the seeds off on the right journey.
Oh, well. No, next year.
Next time. And I'll get on to making some hot sauce as well. So we met several years ago in 2013. We worked together at South Bank Sinfonia, working with Tom Jenkinson, aka Squarepusher.
Yes, yeah.
Fantastic electronic artist, and you did the orchestral arrangements for those and orchestrations. And we also have worked on lots of other projects as well, such as Heritage Orchestra, and we even did a remote recording a few weeks ago. I mean, no one can predict how one's musical journey is going to go in life, but tell me about what set it all off for you. How did you germinate as a composer, arranger and orchestrator?
Oh, I mean, I think, put it this way, it was always obvious I was not going to be a performer, because I was one of these people that I would start learning to play a tune and within about 10 minutes I'd change the tune. I was never going to be a performer in that sense, but I didn't realise it was really a career option. I think even when I was doing my undergraduate degree, I didn't think of it as a career option, and I was kind of slightly aiming towards the kind of the film music composition type thing. But I was doing a master's at Goldsmiths in creative practice, and one of my tutors in jazz arranging and orchestration and film music in Gardner said to me, look, I'm working on an opera for the BBC with this composer Will Gregory, who's won half a Goldfrapp.
Oh, yes.
And said, I need help, you know, putting the dots together for this score for this opera. Yeah. Do you fancy kind of coming on board and helping out with that? So that was my kind of trial by fire of orchestration, was being thrown into this big kind of 2-hour opera commission. And
dog alert. Go on, sorry.
That's right. Being thrown into this 2-hour opera commission. But that was the start of it for me, because I made some of my first kind of links in the industry with Will Gregory, Adrian Utley and Charles Hazelwood, who then led on to the project with Squarepusher. Yeah. And it really taught me the basics of the practical side of orchestration. I guess not what you kind of study when you're in college, but the actual kind of real life situation of being sent a piece of music at midnight that you have to orchestrate and turn around the scores to send to someone to print off at 7 a.m. for the rehearsal at 9 a.m.
Oh, really? Have they really made you do something like that before? That seems unethical.
That's happened as recently as about a month ago.
Okay.
I wouldn't say it's that often, but you certainly have to be willing to work quickly, sometimes to work flexibly.
Right, work at weird hours of the night, much like performance back in the day, I suppose.
Yeah. It's knowing how to work under pressure, being able to work kind of as efficiently as possible without cutting corners that would anyway hurt the performance or the recording. Yeah. But it's finding literally your kind of pathway through it that gets you to the end result.
So I imagine you become quite a bit of a ninja in terms of technology, like with all the programs and stuff you have to use, right?
I guess so. And I mean, if you sat me and 3 or 4 kind of orchestrator arrangers down in a room, we'd start having a really boring conversation about Sibelius and Dorico and Logic, and we'd go through our list of plugins that we like, and that's a big thing actually.
Mm-hmm. Those conversations are really satisfying when you find the right people.
Oh yeah. There's literally there is a group of us that we try and have a little Christmas dinner every year. Obviously we're doing it online this year. Yeah. But it's literally a group of orchestrators, arrangers, copyists, and we just kind of hang out and moan about things in software and sometimes things in the kind of the professional world. Yeah. And set the world to rights. Yeah.
It's like, oh man, I can't wait until Sibelius comes out with this new software edition and things like that.
Yeah, well I think the weird thing is, because there's this slow kind of, I don't want to call it a complete shift, but Dorico is this new kid on the block kind of notation. I think, if I'm going to get this right, the original Sibelius development team were effectively fired by Avid, who own Pro Tools, and then Steinberg basically picked them up and said, hey, come make something from scratch for us. And so Dorico is this whole new kind of program that builds things from the ground up, and we're all kind of going through a sort of transition now at the moment where we're starting to get quite a number of professional jobs that are coming through. Right. I worked on a film actually earlier this year, only doing copying, which is like the layout of the pages for the orchestra, and I think it's one of the first kind of Hollywood films that's used Dorico for that. So I was kind of there helping to lay out the pages and kind of find our pathway through using this new software for film music.
So it's kind of a new thing that you have to adapt not only to pressures of deadlines and things like this with your job, but also adapting to all the software as well. And so Dorico, this new thing, is you've kind of got to learn it, otherwise you'll be left behind, right?
Yeah, totally. And I think, I want to say it's been out about three or 4 years, something like that. And I've been sort of slowly learning over the 3 or 4 years, but obviously a lot of my professional work has still been coming in on Sibelius. But you want to be in the best possible position for creating the best looking scores, but for also doing it as kind of again, as efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
So if there's kind of new workflows that have been set up that can make your job maybe easier, or at least maybe using less kind of workarounds to get to the final result, then you need to know those, because if you don't, someone else will know them.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's interesting. Sometimes you work with someone who work on a very old version of Sibelius, which is absolutely fine, but you'll find they've got a way of doing something that takes about 8 hours, and then when you tell them that there's actually now a way to do that same thing in 15 minutes,
wow.
There's a penny drops moment when they go, okay, maybe we'll look into the new one. But
yeah, you've always got to keep learning, keep adapting, don't you?
I think and I think that's the same for performers as well, isn't it?
I think so. Like, it's kind of funny, because obviously coming from a performer's point of view, but the analogy that first came to my mind was actually my dad, who's a GP, and just staying on top of all the medical literature that's coming out. I mean, maybe that shows that I'm not always on top of performance literature, but like my dad, he's always reading stuff, like journals, like reading up about the new drugs, vaccines that are coming up, and just staying up to date, because you don't want to be that one person who doesn't know about something that is needing to be quite crucial.
Do you find that you have a kind of a need to be comfortable in different repertoire? Like maybe there's a certain, everyone's starting to record this kind of thing. It's like, okay, I need to get my kind of chops around a certain style, or
yeah, can do. I mean, I would suppose that like most performers, if you're working freelancing in a big city such as London, you've got so many different styles thrown at you all the time. So you've just got to adapt, basically. And there are some people that are lucky enough to specialise in one particular performance practice, but then they would find their niche, and perhaps
it would be a struggle, wouldn't it? I think
it could be, unless they're really well ensconced in there. But depending on what you do, it's kind of in your best interest to be as broad as possible with your playing style. That being said, though, I have to say, like you were saying before, having Christmas dinners with your orchestrator friends, talking about like Dorico and Sibelius, I do enjoy a really good geeky chat with cellists about strings.
Okay, yeah. I can introduce you to some other cellists who've literally started talking to me about, I've got the new E string, I change it for this kind of...
An E string for a cello? That's impressive.
Okay, not an E string. But, you get my drift.
Yeah, no.
Actually, no, it's a 5-string. Of course it is. It's my friend Martin, who plays... Cool. So he plays like an electric 5-string. So.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That would make things a lot easier. You could play like the Bach 6th suite and only go up to like 4th position, I think.
Yeah. It's all out there, so...
Yeah, no, when people hear about like, Larson have just introduced a new string. It's got a synthetic core. Ooh, got to try that out. But it's so expensive as well, You don't want to just buy a C string and then realise, this is crap.
I know. I was amazed at how expensive these things are. 'Cause I thought they were kind of like guitar strings, you can buy a pack for like 12 quid or something. It's like, how much for one string?
I know. Like a nice C string will set you back almost £100.
Yeah.
Which is quite scary. So I'm getting a lot of mileage out of the set that I bought in 2019, because, to be honest, why am I going to change my strings this year?
Yeah, no reason. Hopefully next year you'll need new strings.
Maybe. Hopefully there will be an opportunity to do some more playing and things like that. I'm, as we were talking about before, I'm trying to stay positive, but realistic, and finding other things to do as well. Like,
distractions. Yeah,
distractions. Growing chili plants from seedlings. So tell me about one of your favourite projects that you've worked on.
Oh, I mean, it's a tricky one. There's some very kind of honourable mentions, I think, because I know you were involved with the Pete Tong project with Heritage, which is a real favourite.
I liked your little sneaky things that you'd put in the string parts. Like, what? Like, for example, there was one song, I can't remember, but the dynamic marking was quadruple F.
Yes.
And you'd written, like, really effing loud or something.
It was just, I think it was 4 Fs ing loud. I think a lot of that attitude filters down from Jules Buckley, who's obviously the conductor and the kind of the chief arranger, and also Chris Wheeler as well. They've got this really kind of fun, friendly attitude, which literally it seeps into the music itself. But you know what, I actually think it's important to communicate with the musicians kind of as warmly as you can, even in the score. I know you could just stick to the kind of the Italian terms, but I think it can sometimes bring something to life when you use something that's a little bit more casual, but the musicians go, I know what that means, Or if, especially in that project, because you can be playing 50 repeats of a loop abrupt phrase.
Yeah.
And if the orchestrator's putting in there, look, you're nearly there, like, well done, final stretch, something like that.
Yeah.
It gives you something to look into when you actually look at the sheet music, but it also, hopefully it links you to us and to the music a little bit more.
Yeah, I think you do a good job of doing that. It's a bit of moral support, isn't it? I mean, you've done it so far in advance, but then you get there, and as you say, sometimes you are playing these parts that have repeated ostinati over and over and over again, and you just think, what repeat are we on now? What line are we on? Because they all look the same. But if you just have something visually to lock onto.
Absolutely. And I think that's one thing is it's not just being completely practical when you kind of produce this music. It's actually trying to imagine what it's like for the user, for the musician, and to try and make it as user friendly as possible.
You're putting yourself in the performer's shoes.
I think so.
Because I mean, from a performer's perspective, I've definitely seen scores where whoever's been responsible for the parts hasn't done that.
Yeah.
And you just think, why have you not put in bar numbers or something?
Well,
things like that.
That could be one of those 2 a.m. jobs where and they do happen more than you think, but I think it's definitely something you slowly pick up, because there's not many people really teach that. Actually, it's one thing where the kind of the feedback of the musician is really important. So I've never been offended if a musician has come up to me and said, look, actually this page turn isn't quite as manageable as you think it is. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll keep that in mind for next time. I'd made some assumption about, harpist not using a certain hand at certain moments. Like, I can put in the cheeky turn there. And I'm like, if you'd have put it, 8 bars later, it'd work. Like, great. That gives me a bit more knowledge for next time round.
Exactly, and then it's accumulative, isn't it? And you just accumulate this knowledge, and then you have this database of knowledge of when to put in good page turns.
But it's not just the kind of the layout. I think it's even what you actually write. I kind of have a tendency to take risks rather than be safe, especially if it's something that's being well rehearsed and not recorded straight away. I'd rather take the risk and have a performer come back to me and go, I can see what you're trying to achieve here. The way you've notated it, I'm not going to quite be able to do that, but I've got a kind of a workaround for you, and this will work great. And suddenly that's another bit of knowledge that I can take away with me for next time. I say I wouldn't do that if it was going into a recording session at Abbey Road the next day for a film. I'd stay safe. I'd stay to what I know. But if I know there's going to be a bit of rehearsal, then I think taking the risks is one way that you kind of really develop and get away from the things you read in the textbooks.
Exactly. And then because things get revised all the time in rehearsal, and going back to this gardening analogy, it's better to start from a place where you can prune back.
Yes.
Rather than from...
I probably do that too much sometimes.
Rather than from a zero germination rate.
I know, sort of Jules Buckley likes having options as well. So if I'm not sure, I'll kind of send something to him and go, look, this is belt and braces. This is, you've got the options in there. You take out what you don't want. Yeah. And, we'll kind of... It's better than not having it on the page. Yeah. That depends on if you're going to have a rehearsal process. I think if you're going straight into recording, then you have to know what you want and put it on the page. Yeah. But if you've got a bit of flexibility, then I think giving some options... There's actually the Metropole Orchestra in the Netherlands. Yeah. They've got like a machete on the wall of their rehearsal studios, which supposedly was... I think it was Vince Mendoza's kind of editing machete. It was a bit of a joke that, he would be kind of cutting bits out of the score. Yeah. So I think that's part of the process, is editing, refining, learning, and coming back with a bit more knowledge for next time.
Exactly. Start from more and then pare back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see why that would be an honourable mention, though.
Right. That was just an honourable mention. Yeah.
Just thinking that was a year ago, 18,000 people packed into the O2, and how that would just not be possible anymore.
No, and I mean it's really sad, because I saw one of these kind of Facebook timeline posts came up that it was like, I had such an amazing night, Maxi Jazz and Beverly Night and blah blah blah, and it's already booked in for next year, and I don't know how we're going to top it.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to laugh.
But you know what? They are doing it. Obviously, at the point this goes out, it'll be in the past. But they're actually doing a live stream concert from the O2 Arena floor. Yeah, that's right. This Saturday, I believe, which I think is the first gig to be put on in the O2 since lockdown.
Right, musical gig.
Yeah, the first musical gig.
They did tennis there.
Okay, the tennis. All right, I don't follow sport.
All right.
But it's the first music gig to go on in the O2. So they're finding ways to adapt, I think, like we all have. Yeah. And put on something, but I'm really hoping that next summer I get to go and see them. I think they've sketched in for the Isle of Wight Festival and a few other things.
Oh, nice.
So I'm hoping I get to go along and just be part of that again.
There was just the gig that just brought everyone together, wasn't it?
It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I think,
so much fun.
I think sometimes we almost undervalue fun in music. You know, there's something about a project that's just fun. It can bring a lot of people together.
Yeah, I like having fun in music, but that's the thing. I think there's a slight mentality with maybe conservatoire or college. You know, you've got to be very serious about your craft.
Artistic.
Yes, artists, and then. You know, you listen to certain commentaries on classical music especially, and it's very easy to come up with an idea of how that sounds.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I studied at Goldsmiths, so the word kind of art was written in big letters, I think, kind of hanging over a lot of what you did, especially in composition. And I remember the one thing that really kind of opened my eyes was when I did a unit in ethnomusicology and kind of cultural music studies. And they started defining music not by trying to work out whether it was art and what art meant and all these other things and who was protecting the word art, but actually by the way it functions, you know. And it's, is it entertainment? Is it something that's a social activity that brings us together? Is it educational? Is it a commentary on the world? But there's all these other ways that music can function. I think they're all important.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just one function, is it?
I think especially this year it's taught us of the importance of all these things that music does for our kind of society, really.
Yeah, our society, our well-being, just communication of ideas, and then also there's music that's art for art's sake as well,
which is all part of it. I think it's all really important. So
So if that was an honourable mention, what's a project that's right up there at the top?
Well, we're circling all the way back now to the project which I worked with you on in 2013. So the Squarepusher project.
That was a good project.
It was a really important project for me because it was the first time I kind of had the reins taken off me. I wasn't working with another orchestrator arranger kind of overlooking what I was doing. I was essentially given almost a free rein on this score to come up with my kind of orchestral interpretation of this album called Du Fabulum by Tom. I still remember really well the phone call from Charles Hazelwood, and he sort of said, look, I've got this idea for a project, you know, composer is Tom Jenkinson, album's called Du Fabulum, look it up, you know, do you fancy doing it? And I didn't even listen to the album, I just said yes on the phone. And then I went home and listened to the album and I went, what have I let myself in for?
Yeah, say yes first, work it out later.
Well, exactly. But it's even the birds entertained by that. It's an incredible kind of sonic experience as an album. I mean, at the heart of it, you've got these kind of drum and bass drums and quite kind of trancey, melodic kind of chordal stuff. But some of the sounds going on around it are completely insane. Yeah. I think there was a moment where Tom had used in the original this gliding synthesizer which generated all these crazy overtones. And I think I had you guys as cellos playing it. It kind of sounded like Formula One cars going around the track.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, there was that one track you got us as if we were changing gears. You know, it was like...
Exactly. I mean, that was and it was great actually to be freed from thinking of the orchestra in terms of its historical past, in terms of the roles of the instruments and what it was doing, and think of it more as if it is a synthesizer itself. So trying to go, what sound can I get from different parts? So with a synthesizer, you might have like a three-layered sound, and each sound will have its own envelope of its attack, its sustain, its decay, release. And I was finding myself doing that between the strings and the woodwind. So rather than having maybe a uniform kind of swell in strings and woodwinds, now you might have the strings swell in, drop out, but the woodwind take over the kind of the release trail, because they were kind of representing that layer of sound in Tom's work. Yeah.
So it's using the orchestra as a whole, like instrument.
Yeah. And it was also a lot of fun for me just going on YouTube, finding extended techniques that, in studying kind of Berio and whoever else, when you're at college. There's still a whole wealth of these extended techniques that people have come up with kind of in their own homes that aren't documented very well. I mean, there's a great one of this guy playing French horn, and our friend Letty, bless her, kind of obliged to trying out a lot of these kind of random techniques. I think there was one which we couldn't really do now because it was using a plastic McDonald's straw.
Oh, right, yeah.
I mean, very 2013, you couldn't do that now.
Product of its time.
Exactly, yeah, cut into the shape of a reed, which then kind of vibrated, so you had more like an oboe tone, quite gravelly, going into the French horn, and all these fun things that I wouldn't get to do. And I think the best gift was a day with you guys in St John's Waterloo, getting to try all this stuff out.
Yeah, and I remember that day. We were just like making funny sounds, and
which you never get to do. I mean, it's like getting given a Ferrari to kind of take round a track
Yeah.
with, and it's like, here's an orchestra. Do you want to try out some stuff for this project? I think I had to orchestrate one track that we actually kind of rehearsed in full. And then other than that, it was a load of kind of random exercises just to see what we could get out with.
But it's good for us as well because it, as the name Extended Techniques does suggest, it extends us as well.
Yeah.
We become more flexible with the different types of sounds that we can make in our instruments. You mentioned before about being adaptable in performance.
Yeah.
There's never going to be one set of playing that is thrown to you in performance.
Yeah.
One day you might be playing quartet gig in a wedding, and then the next day is something like this workshop we were talking about.
Yeah. Again, for me, it was great kind of to be there with Tom as well, because I think it's important to state that he's a massive part of that process. And I think he had worked with an orchestra before, but not on that kind of material. But to be sat there and kind of had that feedback between the orchestra, the conductor, Tom and myself, is such a valuable thing.
He was really on it. I remember he was like, someone in the viola section played an F sharp. Who was it? Like, he could spot everything that was going on.
His ears are incredibly keen, and his writing is really interesting, because if you take away a lot of the kind of the drums and the things that make it sound like it's on that kind of dance music, electronica side of things, it's actually just really solid kind of contemporary classical writing.
Yeah.
And I've heard him do projects since with like the London Sinfonietta and people like that, and you wouldn't know it was the same person, but he could take the very same notes and play them through a synthesizer and add a drum track to it.
Yeah.
I was speaking to him recently, and he was kind of saying, well, that's his kind of Trojan horse, is he can open his music up to different audiences in the way he presents it.
It sounds like he's just got really good foundations.
Yeah. Oh, and one of the greatest kind of musical minds I know, I think, in terms of his approach to harmony and melody and just the sonic world.
And that way it's not like, I do this particular genre. It's like, I'm a musician.
He's a composer, and I think labels are useful, but at the same time I think he's one of those musicians that definitely you'd need to use a lot of labels to try to describe him.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great compliment to say. You can't pin him down.
Yeah, it's a huge compliment, isn't it? Because it just brings out his uniqueness.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, that's a good answer.
Well, it was the thing for me that set me off. I think everything that followed kind of stemmed from that.
Yeah,
so,
pivotal moment.
Absolutely.
I felt like that because that was my South Bank Sinfonia year, and anything that followed that in the years after South Bank Sinfonia, I could pinpoint its origin to that year.
It's funny, isn't it? We've all kind of got like social media and websites and everything else, but a lot of it is you do a project and you meet people, and people realise you're a safe bet, you're a safe pair of hands, or or you're amazing or whatever. But you find people that you like working with and who like working with you, and that leads to more work. And I think actually that is the way the music industry, for better or I'd say for better, it's the way it works.
Yeah, I think that's quite a nice way that the music industry works, because it gets to a point where everyone can play well.
Yes.
But what's going to set you apart?
Yeah.
If you are booking or fixing certain players, you're going to book people that are nice to work with and flexible and adaptable and all these good traits that we've been talking about. You could have the world's most incredible player, but if they're a bit of a dick.
Yeah. There's not many of those, are there?
They're around. They're around.
No.
But I think just by, natural selection in the way that this industry works, they kind of get weeded out, to use that analogy again, but they kind of get weeded out.
I think so, yeah.
You may or may not know I have a segment in my podcast called the Wildcard Question Round.
Yeah. I'm vaguely prepared for this.
It's okay, it's harmless. So this is where you have the opportunity to choose what I ask you next based on 3 choices that I give you. All right. So your choices are cooking, unexpected talents, and I kind of talked about this before, memorable gigs.
I'm both intrigued and like, what the hell is it? Unexpected talents. So go on then.
All right. What's something that you're very good at that I might not know about?
Oh, this is a tough one. This isn't really, I wouldn't say is it something I'm very good at, but it's another kind of random hobby distraction type thing that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
Kite flying.
What? Really? Okay, I would not have expected that.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've seen these kind of massive kites that can kind of lift, they can lift you off the ground.
Like stunt kites?
Or no, not even stunt kites. They look more like parachutes. So they're like 6-8 feet
Yeah, okay.
wide, and they're a lot of fun, and that's something I quite enjoyed. It's something I'll sometimes just kind of have in my bag with me, and if there's like a park nearby, I'll be like, let's go fly.
Oh, we should have done that today because it was really windy before, wasn't it?
It was really windy. It's also very muddy, so I might have let you have a go. And
no, I'm wearing my white shoes today. That would have been a really, really bad move. Is this just something that you've always done since you were a kid?
I think it's always something I've done in one way or another, but it was probably only 10 years ago or so. I picked up a little power kite and started mucking around with that, and it's another outdoor distraction, so I like my outdoor distractions.
Well, it sounds like you need them if you are primarily sat in front of a computer all day long, or if you're doing orchestrations in the dead of the night preparing for that 7 a.m. deadline. You need that outdoor space.
Absolutely, and because that's the thing that's been really tough this year for me. I can happily spend 28 days of the month in front of the computer screen working away on a project if I get the 2 or 3 days at the end of it where I'm in a rehearsal room or a recording studio with an orchestra. Mm-hmm. To me, that's like the payoff.
Right.
So I think that's the thing that's been really hard this year, is even where there have been those kind of small wins of little projects here and there, kind of arts council things and bits and pieces. It's been not then having that day. I mean, I actually, saying that, I kind of got close to it. I worked on a project about a month ago with the BBC Concert Orchestra and the cellist Abel Slouche.
Oh, yeah.
Me and another orchestrator, again in Gardner, produced some arrangements for that. And because they were new arrangements, we were allowed to go to the rehearsal and kind of be there to answer questions. We didn't need to, because actually the conductor had it all sorted. But we were there just in case things had to be adapted. And it was so nice to be in... we were in the Royal Festival Hall on the South Bank. Obviously no audience, although this was a rehearsal in a way. One-way systems in the corridors, which in that place is really confusing. I think it took me about 10 minutes to find the toilet at one point. And everyone wearing masks the whole time. So it was slightly muted, but it was still lovely to be in a room with, sort of 50-plus musicians.
It's like what we were talking about before, sort of coming full circle. It's just those feelings that well up inside you when you get the opportunity to be in the same room as live music making.
It's something I can't describe, and I think even if you've been to plenty of kind of orchestral gigs and concerts, there's something about my job when I get to literally sit next to the conductor, which I sometimes do during a rehearsal, and the power of that sound, it's incredible. Yeah. It really is incredible, and it can be 50, 60, 80 musicians all coming together on this one piece of music, and it's moving.
It's a force, isn't it?
It's a force, and it's something I'm really looking forward to getting back to.
Yeah. Oh, well, fingers crossed for 2021. I feel like there are these little slivers of hope that we have.
Yes.
In August, September, things were starting to open up again, and then we kind of went into Tier 2 and then lockdown in October, November, and now we're in whatever the hell this is in December. But, I'm just hoping more slivers of hope, really taking those moments when we can get them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then, fingers crossed, we get a vaccine soon so we can go back to normal.
We will get there. I'm convinced we'll get there.
Yeah.
It's just, we've got to cling on and
keep pursuing...
keep growing chilies and
these distractions.
Whatever else, playing crazy golf and anything possible.
Well, thank you so much for joining me.
It's been a joy.
Outdoors, al fresco. I mean, we've talked so much about the importance of outdoor space today, so it seems quite fitting that we brought it outside for this episode. So where can people find out more about you and your work?
Generally, if you Google Peter Riley Music, got a website which I was in the process of doing up. I think when the first lockdown hit, so it's still in the kind of state of. So hopefully by the time that this has gone out, I'll have actually finished it. So that's a really good thing to make me finish the website.
Yeah, you still haven't got like a section that says highlights for 2020 or anything.
Oh no! Looking forward to 2020. No, no, that's gone. So there's the website, and then I'm kind of on all the normal kind of social media channels. So look for either Peter Riley Music or Music Pete is the kind of the Instagram friendly Twitter kind of tag.
Thanks so much. So we'll put those details in the show notes, and thanks once again for joining
thank you.
me. Cheers. Hope you enjoyed my in-person conversation with Peter Riley. Check out the show notes for more information on Peter, as well as a link to the album Eufabulum by Squarepusher that Peter mentioned in our chat. This might be a bit different from what you're used to listening to if you listen to a lot of classical music, but give it a go. It'll take you to another sonic world. That's it for today. Special thanks to Roz Nagy for my logo and Daniel Alms for my jingle. park-sized thanks and gratitude to Peter Riley for being my guest in this episode. It was so great to chat in person for once. And as always, thank you for listening. This is new. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can now donate and buy me a coffee on my Ko-fi page. That's ko-fi.com/asitcomespod. Get in touch at asitcomespodcast@gmail.com or on the website asitcomes.com, where you'll also find all previous episodes and transcripts of the podcast. You can also get in touch with me via Instagram and Facebook, where I highly recommend you give me a follow and a like at asitcomespod. Remember to rate, review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you to those who've already done so. And thanks for continuing to spread the word. Chat to you soon and take good care. Bye.